Standing at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, you're dwarfed by its sheer scale, each block looming above you like a silent giant, some weighing as much as 15 tons. It's impossible not to wonder, how did a civilization without wheels, without iron tools, without modern engineering, accomplish something so astonishing? This isn't just a story about stones stacked high. It's a story about human ambition, ingenuity, and the staggering cost both in labor and lives of chasing immortality. The pyramids have stood for over 4,500 years, but the secrets buried within their walls are only now coming to light. Think about the numbers for a moment. The Great Pyramid alone consists of roughly 2,300,000 blocks, each meticulously cut, transported, and placed with precision that rivals modern construction. But here's the twist. The real mystery isn't just how they built it, it's why. What drove an entire society to dedicate decades of backbreaking labor to these monuments? Was it purely for the glory of a pharaoh, or was there something deeper at play? The truth is, the pyramids are more than tombs. They're a window into a world where engineering and mythology collided, where every chisel mark tells a story of faith, power, and the relentless human spirit. Today, we're peeling back the layers of myth and misconception to uncover the true cost of building the pyramids. We'll meet the thousands of workers who toiled under the desert sun, the ingenious architects who turned impossible dreams into stone, and the legends that have woven themselves into history. From the logistical nightmares of moving massive blocks across miles of sand to the surprising evidence that debunks old stereotypes about slave labor, this journey will challenge what you thought you knew. So come with us, step into the shadow of the pyramids, and let's uncover the hidden truths behind one of humanity's most enduring mysteries. The Great Pyramid didn't just rise from the desert, it defied logic. Picture this: 2,300,000 blocks, each one weighing between 2 and 15 tons, hauled across miles of scorching sand, then lifted hundreds of feet into the air with nothing but ropes, ramps, and raw muscle. To grasp the enormity of this feat, imagine stacking 25 Empire State Buildings, except every brick was dragged by hand, without a single wheel or pulley system as we know them today. But here's what's even more mind-blowing: the precision. The pyramid's base is leveled to within just 2 centimeters, and its sides align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west. This wasn't just brute force, it was mathematics, astronomy, and engineering fused into stone. How did they achieve such accuracy? Recent discoveries suggest the ancient Egyptians used the stars as their guide, tracking the movements of constellations to align their monuments with celestial precision. And then there's the question of speed. Conventional estimates suggest the Great Pyramid took around 20 years to build. That means workers would have had to place one block every 2 to 3 minutes, non-stop, daylight to dark for decades. It's a pace that would challenge modern construction crews with cranes and computers. So how did they do it? The answer lies in the forgotten workforce, not slaves, as Hollywood often portrays, but skilled laborers who rotated in shifts, fed by a well-organized supply chain that stretched the length of the Nile. The real marvel isn't just the pyramid itself, but the invisible machinery behind it. The quarries that produced flawless limestone, the barges that floated blocks downstream during floods, the temporary ramp systems that snaked up the growing structure. This was a society that turned logistics into an art form, mobilizing thousands like a well-oiled machine. Yet for all we've uncovered, the pyramids still guard their secrets. Every new theory, from spiral ramps to counterweight systems, only deepens the mystery. one thing's certain: these stones don't just mark the tomb of a pharaoh. They're a testament to what humans can achieve when vision, will, and ingenuity collide. For generations, the image of enslaved masses toiling under the lash to build the pyramids has been etched into our collective imagination. But what if everything we thought we knew was wrong? The discovery of a sprawling workers' village just south of the Giza plateau shattered that centuries-old myth. Here, archaeologists uncovered not chains and whips, but bakeries producing thousands of loaves, fish bones from well-stocked meals, and medical evidence of skilled bone setting. Proof these workers were valued, not brutalized. This was no slave camp. These were skilled artisans and laborers who lived in organized neighborhoods, with their own craft workshops and even breweries providing beer, a staple of the ancient Egyptian diet. Skeletal remains reveal something equally surprising. Many of these workers received medical care so advanced, some survived complex surgeries like amputations. These weren't disposable laborers, they were a protected, even respected workforce. So who were they? Most likely farmers from villages along the Nile, recruited during the annual flooding season when their fields were underwater. Instead of idle months, they had work paid in bread, beer, and likely a sense of sacred duty. Records found at the site suggest workers were divided into crews with names like Friends of Khufu or Drunkards of Menkaure, hinting at camaraderie, even pride in their work. The scale of this operation rewrites history. Feeding 10,000 workers required 30 cattle and hundreds of goats slaughtered daily, with grain shipments arriving from across Egypt. This wasn't just construction, it was a nationwide mobilization, a seasonal economy unto itself. Perhaps most telling are the tombs found beside the pyramid's final resting places of workers buried with honors, some even near the pharaohs they served. In a society where burial rites reflected eternal status, this speaks volumes. The pyramid builders weren't nameless slaves. They were craftsmen who left their mark on history, one perfectly placed stone at a time. Moving mountains of stone across the desert sounds like something out of myth, yet the ancient Egyptians did it with nothing but ingenuity and elbow grease. The quarries at Chura, over 800 kilometers up the Nile, supplied the gleaming white limestone that once encased the Great Pyramid, while Aswan, nearly 1,000 kilometers to the south, provided the granite for its inner chambers. Each block was a logistical nightmare waiting to happen, too heavy for carts, too brittle for rough handling, and too precious to lose. So how did they pull it off? The answer lies in the Nile itself, the ancient world's ultimate conveyor belt. During the annual flood season, when the river swelled beyond its banks, engineers could float stones on barges directly to the construction site. But getting those blocks to the water was another challenge entirely. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of wooden sledges, some still bearing the wear marks of countless journeys, dragged across makeshift roads paved with compacted clay. The real breakthrough came when researchers tested an idea found in an ancient tomb painting: pouring water in front of the sledge. The damp sand reduced friction by half, turning back-breaking labor into something almost manageable. A team of just 20 workers could then haul a 2-ton block at a steady pace, no wheels required. Yet the hardest part came after the river, lifting those stones into place. Ramps were almost certainly used, but the design remains hotly debated. Some argue for straight, monumental ramps stretching into the sky. Others propose spiral ramps hugging the pyramid's sides like a coiled snake. The truth may lie in the cracks, literally. Recent scans of the Great Pyramid reveal hidden internal ramps, suggesting the builders might have combined techniques, shifting methods as the structure rose higher. What's often overlooked is the army of unsung heroes behind the scenes. the carpenters who maintained the sledges, the crews who kept the ramps clear of debris, the surveyors who ensured every block arrived precisely where it was needed. This wasn't just brute force, it was a symphony of coordination where every movement had to be timed perfectly. One misstep could mean months of work undone. The most astonishing part, they did it all without written blueprints, no detailed manuals, no steel tools, just generations of hard-won knowledge passed down through practice. Every block placed was a testament to human adaptability, a reminder that innovation isn't always about invention sometimes, it's about perfecting what's already in your hands. The precision of the pyramids isn't just impressive, it's borderline unbelievable. Take the Great Pyramid's alignment. Its sides face true north, south, east, and west with an error margin of just 1/15 of a degree. To put that in perspective, modern architects using laser-guided tools would struggle to match that accuracy. So how did a civilization without compasses or satellites pull this off? The answer might lie in the stars and a simple tool called the Merkit. Picture an ancient Egyptian surveyor at dusk, holding a palm rod with a weighted string, waiting for specific stars to cross a notched horizon. This was their version of GPS, tracking the movements of constellations like the Big Dipper or Orion to map perfect cardinal directions onto the desert floor. But alignment was just the beginning. The pyramid's base forms a near-perfect square, with sides varying by less than 5 centimeters across 230 meters, a feat that required more than celestial navigation. Archaeologists have found evidence of meticulous ground leveling techniques, where workers dug a grid of shallow trenches, filled them with water, and used the flat surface as a natural level. They might have even employed primitive sighting tools made from reeds to check angles, proving that sometimes low-tech solutions are the most brilliant. Then there's the math. The ratio of the Great Pyramid's perimeter to its height is 2 times pi, a mathematical constant the Egyptians theoretically shouldn't have known. Coincidence, maybe, but when you see how precisely they incorporated the golden ratio into chamber dimensions, it's hard to dismiss their understanding of advanced geometry. Some researchers believe they derived these principles from observing shadows or rope measurements, turning everyday objects into tools for cosmic calculations. The real shocker, they did all this without standardized units. Cubits varied slightly between projects, meaning workers constantly adapted measurements on the fly. Imagine building a skyscraper where every tape measure gave slightly different readings, yet they made it work. This wasn't just precision, it was precision under pressure, a testament to problem solving that transcended technology. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of the pyramids. Perfection doesn't require modern gadgets. It demands patience, observation, and the willingness to let the universe itself be your blueprint. Every perfectly placed stone whispers the same truth, that human ingenuity, when paired with nature's rhythms, can achieve the impossible. Feeding an army of workers wasn't just about filling stomachs, it was about fueling history. Picture a bustling complex south of the Giza plateau, where smoke from dozens of bakeries curled into the sky, and the tang of fermenting grain hung thick in the air. Here, teams of bakers produced an estimated 2,000 loaves of bread every single day, while nearby breweries churned out over 10,000 liters of beer, not just as rations but as currency. This wasn't subsistence, it was a highly organized operation that transformed agriculture into architecture. The scale of this supply chain is staggering. To keep 10,000 workers fed, the Egyptians needed a daily delivery of 21 cattle and 23 sheep, alongside endless shipments of grain from farms along the Nile. Archaeologists have uncovered massive clay vats still stained with beer residue and ovens large enough to bake dozens of loaves at once. But the real genius wasn't just the quantity, it was the logistics. Grain stores were positioned along river routes for easy transport, and bakeries were built right beside worker housing, turning mealtime into a seamless part of the construction rhythm. Beer wasn't just a drink, it was liquid motivation. Brewed thick and porridge-like, it packed calories and nutrients, serving as both meal and hydration under the desert sun. Workers received daily allotments. 3 loaves of bread and 5 liters of beer was standard, but the quality might surprise you. Residue analysis reveals some brews were spiced with dates or figs, a small luxury in an otherwise grueling job. The most revealing detail: fish bones, tons of them piled high in ancient garbage pits. While meat was reserved for higher status workers, Nile perch and catfish were staples, providing protein to the masses. Even the bread was engineered for endurance, mixed with barley or emmer wheat. It was denser than modern loaves, designed to stick to the ribs of laborers hauling stones under a scorching sky. What's often overlooked is how this system sustained morale. Shared meals in communal courtyards fostered camaraderie among crews with names like the Enduring Ones. Graffiti found near bakeries shows workers joking and competing, proof that full bellies fueled more than just muscles, they fueled loyalty. This wasn't slavery, it was a society-wide effort where every farmer, brewer, and baker played a role in immortality. The pyramids didn't rise on stone alone. They rose on mountains of bread, rivers of beer, and the quiet genius of turning a nation's harvest into the world's most enduring monuments. Every loaf baked was a brick in the invisible foundation of history. 20 years, that's the number etched into history books as the time it took to build the Great Pyramid. But when you break down the math, that timeline feels almost impossible. 2,300,000 blocks placed in just 7,300 days. That's a new block set into position every 2 to 3 minutes, sunrise to sunset without pause. Could even the most organized ancient society pull that off, or is there more to the story? Recent discoveries have archaeologists divided. Some argue the 20-year estimate holds up if you imagine a workforce of 25,000 laborers working in rotating shifts with flawless coordination. They point to the seasonal nature of the project. Farmers recruited during the Nile's flood months, when fields were underwater, turning idle hands into a construction army. With labor surging during these periods, the pace could have been explosive, but others counter with logistics. Moving 15-ton granite beams from a swan 800 kilometers away wasn't something you rushed. Each block required precise transport by barge, then careful hauling up ramp systems that would have bottlenecked without meticulous planning. And what about the finishing touches? The pyramid's original casing stones, polished white limestone, fit together so tightly you couldn't slip a razor blade between them. That level of craftsmanship doesn't happen overnight. Then there's the wild card: weather. Sandstorms could halt work for days. Low Nile years might delay stone shipments. Even minor setbacks would ripple through the timeline. Some researchers now suggest 30 or even 40 years might be more realistic, especially if construction paused during political upheaval or resource shortages. The most compelling evidence, though, might lie in the workers' bones. Skeletons from the laborer cemeteries show signs of repetitive stress injuries, years of hauling and lifting, not months. If this was a sprint, why do their bodies tell a story of endurance? Perhaps the answer isn't in choosing between fast or slow, but in rethinking how the pyramid grew. New scans reveal hidden chambers and internal ramps, hinting at phases of construction like a project built in layers, not all at once. Maybe Khufu's architects started with a core, then expanded outward as resources allowed. One thing's certain, whether it took 2 decades or 4, the pyramid stands as proof that time bends to human will. Every block placed was a victory over the clock, a declaration that some monuments are worth waiting for. Copper chisels might seem hopelessly soft compared to modern steel tools, but in the hands of an ancient Egyptian stonemason, they became instruments of astonishing precision. Imagine standing in a limestone quarry under the blazing sun, swinging a wooden mallet against a copper chisel, each strike carefully angled to split the rock along its natural grain. These workers didn't just hack away at stone, they danced with it, using knowledge passed down through generations to exploit weaknesses in the rock's structure. Archaeologists have found chisels worn down to mere stubs, their edges rounded from countless strikes, silent witnesses to the sheer persistence required to carve history from the earth. But shaping the blocks was only half the battle. Moving them required another set of ingenious tools, ropes woven from papyrus and palm fibers, stronger than steel when twisted tight. Teams of workers would loop these ropes around sledges, heaving in unison to drag multi-ton stones across the desert. The real breakthrough came when they discovered wet sand reduced friction dramatically, turning an impossible task into a coordinated effort. You can still see the evidence today: ancient graffiti on quarry walls showing sledges loaded with blocks, surrounded by workers pouring water from jugs. Then there were the measuring tools, simple yet brilliant. A cubit rod marked with precise divisions ensured every block met exact dimensions. Surveyors used plumb bobs made of stone or wood to check vertical angles, while leveled wooden frames filled with water acted as giant spirit levels. These weren't just tools, they were extensions of the builder's hands, honed through trial and error to achieve perfection. Perhaps most fascinating are the pounders, rounded dolerite stones used to smooth granite. Workers would grind these hammer-like rocks back and forth for hours, polishing surfaces to a mirror finish. The Great Pyramid's hidden chambers still bear the marks of this painstaking process, grooves worn into the walls where craftsmen perfected their art. What's striking isn't just the simplicity of these tools, but the mastery behind them. Without blueprints or computers, the Egyptians turned copper, rope, and wood into the building blocks of eternity. Every chisel mark, every worn rope fiber, tells a story of human ingenuity, proof that greatness isn't about the tools you have, but how you use them. The quarries of ancient Egypt were more than just holes in the ground. They were open-air workshops where geometry met geology. Picture a team of workers at Tura, the source of the pyramid's gleaming white casing stones, scanning the limestone cliffs for hidden fault lines. They knew something modern engineers often forget: stone has a grain just like wood. By driving wooden wedges into natural cracks and soaking them with water, they turned physics into their ally. As the wedges swelled, they exerted enough pressure to split multi-ton blocks cleanly from the bedrock, an ancient form of precision engineering without a single explosion. But Aswan's granite posed a different challenge. Harder than limestone and riddled with crystals, it resisted simple splitting. Here, workers employed a brutal ballet of fire and cold. They'd heat the granite's surface with controlled fires, then douse it with water from the Nile. The sudden temperature change caused the rock to fracture along predictable lines. Chisel marks still visible on abandoned blocks show their next step: pounding grooves with dolerite hammers along the fracture line, then inserting copper wedges to pry the block free centimeter by centimeter. It was slow, backbreaking work. A single obelisk could take 7 months to extract, but the results were flawless. The real genius lay in foresight. Quarry masters marked blocks like modern architects drafting blueprints, using ochre paint to outline each piece's intended shape before extraction. This minimized waste and ensured uniformity, critical when blocks had to fit together perfectly miles away. At a swan, you can still see mistakes left behind, half-carved obelisks abandoned when hidden cracks appeared, teaching us how they prioritized quality over speed. Transporting these stones was another feat. For the pyramid's inner chambers, workers extracted 60-ton granite beams, each requiring 200 men to drag onto barges. How did they avoid crushing the boats? Recent experiments show they likely built giant reed rafts around the stones, letting buoyancy do the heavy lifting. Every step from quarry to construction site was a lesson in working with nature rather than against it. What's often overlooked is the human cost. Skeletal remains from quarry sites show workers suffered from silicosis, lung damage from inhaled stone dust, and repetitive stress injuries. Yet tomb paintings depict them singing as they worked, their rhythmic chants keeping time with mallet strikes. This wasn't just labor, it was a craft passed down through generations. The quarries didn't just supply stones, they forged the skilled hands that would shape eternity. Raising stones hundreds of feet into the air without cranes or pulleys seems impossible, yet the Egyptians did it with nothing but ramps and relentless determination. The question isn't whether they used ramps, but what kind. Picture a straight, monumental incline stretching from the desert floor to the pyramid's peak, wide enough for teams of workers to drag blocks upward. This classic theory makes intuitive sense, but the numbers don't add up. A single straight ramp for the Great Pyramid would have required more material than the pyramid itself, an absurd waste of resources for efficiency-minded builders. That's where the zigzag theory comes in. Imagine a narrower ramp winding back and forth up one face of the pyramid, like a switchback trail on a mountainside. It's far more economical, using maybe a quarter of the material, but there's a catch. Sharp turns would have made maneuvering multi-ton blocks nearly impossible. Workers couldn't just pivot stones mid-haul, they needed smooth, continuous paths. The game changer emerged when archaeologists discovered remnants of a ramp system at Hatnub, an ancient alabaster quarry. This wasn't straight or zigzag, it was a spiraling roadway with staircases flanked by post holes, suggesting a pulley-like mechanism. Teams could have hauled stones up the incline while others stabilized the load from the sides, turning a vertical challenge into a coordinated horizontal pull. Even more intriguing are the hidden clues inside the Great Pyramid itself. Scans reveal mysterious voids spiraling upward near the edges, potential evidence of internal ramps still buried within the structure. If confirmed, it would mean the builders grew the pyramid layer by layer, using its own core as a scaffold. Workers could drag blocks through dimly lit tunnels, emerging at each new level like ants building a mound from the inside out. But ramps alone didn't solve the height problem. Every additional foot made hauling harder, so engineers likely combined techniques. Maybe they used straight ramps for the lower levels, where material costs were manageable, then switched to spirals or levers higher up. Some scholars even propose counterweight systems, sand-filled sledges descending one side to lift blocks on the other, turning gravity into an ally. The real brilliance lies in the adaptability. These builders weren't locked into one method, they evolved as the pyramid rose. Ramps might explain the bulk of construction, but for the final capstone, that could have required something more daring, perhaps a makeshift crane or a series of levers, each small lift a triumph of collective ingenuity. What's undeniable is the result: millions of blocks raised to impossible heights with nothing but wood, rope, and human sweat. The ramps are gone now, eroded by time, but their legacy remains etched in stone, one perfect layer at a time. The bones tell a story modern medicine can still read, a story of cracked vertebrae, worn joints, and fractures carefully set with linen bandages. Skeletons unearthed from the workers' cemetery at Giza reveal spines compressed from years of carrying heavy loads, shoulders deformed by the constant strain of hauling ropes, and knees scarred by countless climbs up makeshift ramps. But look closer and you'll find something unexpected. Healed fractures with near-perfect alignment, skulls bearing the marks of successful trepanation drills, even amputations where the patient survived long after. This wasn't just a workforce, it was a community with access to healthcare rivaling any ancient civilization. One skeleton, labeled Worker 82 by archaeologists, tells a particularly striking tale. His right arm, broken in 3 places, shows signs of an elaborate splint system, wooden braces wrapped in linen strips soaked in resin to harden into a makeshift cast. The bone healed cleanly, proving the injury was treated by someone who understood anatomy. Nearby, a female laborer's skull bears the precise circular marks of a surgical drill, likely relieving pressure from a head injury. She lived years after the procedure, her bones showing smooth regrowth around the hole. These weren't crude attempts at medicine. They were sophisticated interventions by healers who'd mapped the human body through hands-on experience. Yet the most revealing finds aren't the injuries, it's how they were distributed. Younger workers show fractures from sudden accidents, while older skeletons display the slow erosion of repetitive labor. Some bodies were buried with worn stone hammers still clutched in their hands, others with jars of salve made from honey and thyme, an ancient antiseptic. The message is clear: these people weren't disposable. They were cared for, their pain managed with poultices of willow bark, a natural aspirin, and their wounds cleaned with fermented grain alcohol. The cemetery itself defies expectations. Unlike the mass graves you'd associate with slave labor, these tombs are individual, some even adorned with crude hieroglyphs praising the deceased's skill. Mary, the strong-armed, reads one epitaph, Nefer, who never missed a day's work, another. Several graves contain small limestone pyramids, miniature versions of the monuments they helped build, ensuring their own journey to the afterlife. What emerges isn't a picture of oppression, but of a society that understood the value of its labor force. Workers had dental care evidenced by honey-based fillings in molars, diets supplemented with garlic to fight infection, and even physical therapy. Wall paintings show groups stretching together like ancient yoga classes. The pyramid builders didn't just endure, they thrived under conditions that would break modern safety standards, their resilience etched as deeply into their bones as their chisels marked the stones they raised. Perhaps the most poignant discovery sits apart from the rest, the grave of a child no older than 10, buried with a tiny copper chisel. The bones show no signs of labor, only malnutrition, likely a worker's son who died of illness. Yet someone took care to wrap him in linen and place tools beside him, ensuring he'd be recognized in death as part of the project that defined his community. In that small tomb lies the pyramid's truest cost, not just sweat and stone, but generations bound together by a shared dream of eternity. The pyramids didn't just rise from the desert, they reshaped an entire economy. Imagine the sheer volume of resources needed, not just stone and labor, but linen for ropes, wood for sledges, copper for chisels, and gold for the burial chamber's dazzling finish. This wasn't construction, it was a nationwide economic engine, pulling in goods from every corner of Egypt and beyond. Some historians argue the project drained the kingdom's wealth, while others insist it supercharged trade networks and technological progress. So which was it, a financial black hole or the ultimate stimulus package? Let's start with the costs. The Great Pyramid alone consumed enough limestone to build 30 Empire State Buildings, not to mention the 5,000 tons of granite hauled from Aswan. Then there were the hidden expenses. Feeding thousands of workers required entire fleets of fishing boats on the Nile and fields of grain stretching to the horizon. Precious metals were no exception. Records from the time mention shipments of electrum, a gold-silver alloy, arriving from Nubia to gild the pyramid's capstone. For a civilization without coinage, where wealth was measured in grain and cattle, this level of expenditure would have been staggering. Yet for every scholar who sees economic strain, another points to evidence of booming innovation. The demand for copper tools sparked advances in metallurgy, with smiths refining techniques to produce stronger chisels. The need to transport stone led to breakthroughs in boat design, including reinforced hulls capable of carrying 80-ton blocks. Even agriculture flourished. Farmers along the Nile adopted more efficient irrigation methods to meet the pyramid's insatiable appetite for wheat and barley. Trade routes tell their own story. Cedar from Lebanon, turquoise from Sinai, myrrh from Punt all flowed into Egypt in unprecedented quantities during pyramid construction. These weren't just luxury imports, they were strategic investments. The cedar, for instance, became the sledges that moved limestone, while resins from distant lands preserved the workers' food. Far from isolation, pyramid-building Egypt was a hub of globalization, its docks bustling with merchants from a dozen cultures, the most surprising twist. The pyramid economy may have birthed early labor protections. Pay records found at worker sites show a system of rations adjusted for skill and seniority, a primitive but effective wage structure. When a crew exceeded quotas, they received extra beer or fish. This wasn't just fairness, it was smart economics. Motivated workers meant faster progress, turning the pyramid into a case study in productivity. Of course, not everyone benefited equally. Taxes in grain and labor hit peasant farmers hardest, and some provincial tombs from the era show signs of neglect, evidence that local elites redirected resources to the pharaoh's pet project. Yet even here there's nuance. Workers' villages reveal imported pottery and exotic foods, suggesting some wealth trickled down. The pyramid didn't just consume Egypt's economy, it rewired it, creating winners and losers in a complex web of supply and demand. Perhaps the ultimate testament to its economic impact lies in what happened when construction stopped. During the reign of Khufu's successors, when pyramid ambitions shrank, trade networks contracted. The lesson is clear: love it or hate it, the pyramid was the ultimate mixed blessing, a burden that pushed Egypt to its limits, but also the project that taught a civilization how to think big. Every block placed was a down payment on progress, paid not just in stone, but in the sweat and ingenuity of an economy stretched to its breaking point and thriving because of it. The pyramids have always whispered of hidden secrets, but modern technology is finally letting us listen. Behind the towering limestone facade of the Great Pyramid lies a labyrinth of passages so precisely engineered, they've defied explanation for millennia. Take the King's Chamber, a vault of red granite where every surface hums with mathematical intent. The walls are cut within a tolerance of 2 millimeters, the ceiling beams weigh 50 tons each, and yet there's not a single hieroglyph or treasure to explain why such effort was expended. This wasn't just a tomb, it was a machine of stone designed with purposes we're only beginning to grasp. Then there's the Queen's Chamber, often overlooked but equally puzzling. Unlike the stark grandeur of the King's Chamber, this room hides subtle clues in its very architecture. 2 narrow shafts, each barely 20 centimeters wide, pierce the walls at precise angles, not for ventilation as once thought, but perhaps for something far more celestial. Recent studies suggest these shafts align with specific stars at key times of the year, turning the chamber into an ancient observatory or even a symbolic pathway for the pharaoh's soul. But the real bombshell came in 2017, when muon radiography scans revealed a massive void above the Grand Gallery, stretching at least 30 meters long. Dubbed the Big Void, this space isn't on any ancient blueprint. Is it a hidden chamber, a structural relief to redistribute weight, or something more unexpected? The debate rages, but one thing's clear. After 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid still guards its deepest secrets. Even older mysteries lurk in the pyramid's very bones. The subterranean chamber, carved into the bedrock beneath the foundation, seems deliberately unfinished, its walls rough-hewn, the floor uneven. Some theorists believe it was meant to house something never placed there, while others argue it's a symbolic underworld, mirroring the pharaoh's journey through the afterlife. The truth might lie in the pyramid's most haunting feature, the so-called air shafts of the king's chamber. These narrow tunnels, no wider than a dinner plate, extend outward at perfect angles toward the night sky. Robotic explorers sent in 22 found copper handles and small doors, hinting at mechanisms or rituals we've yet to understand. What's startling isn't just what we've found, but what we've missed. Infrared scans show temperature anomalies in certain blocks, hints of hollow spaces or different materials hidden behind the stones. Some researchers speculate about hidden records, sealed away in chambers lined with metals impervious to time. Others point to the pyramid's acoustic properties. Stand in the right spot, and the walls seem to amplify whispers into echoes, as if the structure itself was tuned to certain frequencies. Every new discovery peels back another layer, revealing not just a tomb, but a multidimensional puzzle. From the precision-cut, relieving chambers stacked above the king's chamber to the enigmatic well shaft that plunges through the pyramid's core, these aren't random features, they're chapters in a manual we're still learning to read. Pyramids don't just challenge our understanding of ancient engineering, they force us to reconsider what these monuments truly meant to the people who built them. Perhaps the greatest secret isn't hidden in any chamber, but in the minds of those who saw stone not as a barrier, but as a canvas for immortality. Look up at the night sky over Giza, and you'll see more than just stars, you'll witness a mirror. The three pyramids of the Giza Plateau don't just stand in a row, they echo the exact configuration of Orion's belt, with the Nile River mirroring the Milky Way's celestial flow. This isn't coincidence, it's a deliberate act of cosmic architecture where earth and sky were woven together in stone. For the ancient Egyptians, the heavens weren't just a spectacle, they were a roadmap for the afterlife, a divine landscape the pharaoh's soul would navigate to join the gods. The precision is staggering. The Great Pyramid's air shafts align with key stars. One points directly to Orion, the constellation associated with Osiris, god of rebirth, while another targets Thuban, the pole star of their era. These weren't ventilation shafts, they were spiritual highways designed to channel the pharaoh's ka, or life force, straight to the cosmic realms. Even the pyramid's placement is a celestial cipher. Its southeast corner aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, while the northwest corner tracks the summer solstice sunset, turning the entire structure into a giant stone calendar. But the celestial connection runs deeper than alignment. The pyramid's dimensions encode astronomical math. Multiply its height by 43,200, and you get the polar radius of Earth, a number the Egyptians shouldn't have known. Divide its perimeter by its height, and you get 2 times pi, a ratio that also governs the Earth's curvature. Were these intentional nods to cosmic harmony, or mere coincidences? Scholars remain divided, but one thing's certain: the builders saw their creation as a bridge between worlds. The symbolism touches every layer of design. The smooth white casing stones, now mostly gone, once reflected sunlight like a man-made star, visible for miles. The capstone, likely gold-plated, would have blazed like a miniature sun at dawn. Even the pyramid's name in ancient Egyptian, Akhet Khufu, meaning horizon of Khufu, affirms it as a gateway between earthly and divine realms. Perhaps most telling are the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in the world, carved inside later pyramids. They described the pharaoh's soul climbing a celestial ladder formed by the pyramid's edges, each step bringing him closer to the eternal stars. This wasn't just poetry, it was a belief system etched into geometry. The pyramids didn't just house the dead, they launched them skyward, turning stone into a launch pad for immortality. Today, as astronomers map the pyramids' alignments with ever greater precision, we're left with a haunting question. Did the ancients know something about the universe we're still discovering? The stars have shifted since Khufu's time. Thuban is no longer the pole star, but the pyramids remain, a frozen moment when humanity reached for the heavens and touched them. The Nile wasn't just a river to the pyramid builders, it was their ultimate collaborator. Picture the annual floodwaters swelling over the riverbanks, transforming the landscape into a shimmering network of temporary canals. This wasn't just nature's rhythm, it was the construction schedule. When the Nile flooded each summer, it didn't just irrigate fields, it became a liquid highway, carrying barges laden with stones straight to the pyramid's doorstep. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of ancient docks near Giza, where massive limestone blocks would have been offloaded from boats. But here's the ingenious part. The Egyptians didn't just wait for the flood, they engineered it. Evidence suggests they dug a series of canals to extend the Nile's reach, creating waterways that snaked through the desert like veins. Satellite imaging reveals faint traces of these channels, long since buried under sand, some running parallel to the pyramid complex. The logistics were breathtaking. A single granite beam from Aswan could weigh 60 tons, impossible to drag overland for 800 kilometers, but floated on a barge during high water, and the journey became manageable. Workers likely built reed rafts around the stones, using the river's buoyancy to do the heavy lifting. When the floodwaters receded, they'd leave behind something equally precious: mud. This nutrient-rich silt wasn't just farm fertilizer, it was the perfect binder for ramps and roads, mixed with sand to create sturdy surfaces for dragging sledges. Then there's the hidden role of water in shaping the stones themselves. In the quarries, workers drilled rows of holes along granite seams, then hammered wooden wedges into them. When the wedges were soaked, they expanded with enough force to crack the rock cleanly, a technique still used in some quarries today. Even the pyramid's famous casing stones might owe their mirror-like polish to water. Some researchers believe workers used wet sand as a natural abrasive, grinding the limestone surfaces smooth with nothing but patience and the Nile's endless supply. But perhaps the most vital gift of the Nile was hydration. Feeding 10,000 workers in the desert required more than bread and beer, it demanded fresh water. Recent excavations have found vast underground galleries near the workers' village, lined with porous clay jars that kept water cool. These weren't just storage pits, they were early refrigeration systems, ensuring laborers had access to clean drinking water even in the blistering heat. The river's influence didn't stop at the construction site. The pyramid's very orientation, its sides aligned to true north, might trace back to the Nile. Some scholars suggest surveyors used the river's consistent north-south flow as a giant compass, aligning their measurements with its current. Every block placed, every ramp built, every worker fed, it all flowed back to the Nile. Without its seasonal floods, its transport routes, its life-giving water, the pyramids would have remained a pharaoh's impossible dream. Instead, they stand as monuments to humanity's ability to harness nature's rhythms and turn them into stone. The Great Pyramid stones don't just form a shape, they whisper equations. Take its base perimeter, 923.7 meters, divided by its original height of 146.6 meters, gives us 6.28. That's 2 times pi, accurate to within 0.05%. A fluke, maybe, but when you find the same ratio repeated in the pyramid's inner chambers, it's harder to dismiss. The Egyptians might not have known pi as we do, but they understood its practical magic, the relationship between a circle's curves and a square's lines, etched into their most sacred geometry. Then there's the golden ratio, nature's favorite number, the pyramid's apothegm, the diagonal line from base to apex divided by half its base length equals 1.618, the golden ratio to 4 decimal places. This same proportion appears in everything from seashell spirals to the human face, suggesting the builders weren't just stacking blocks, they were mirroring the universe's hidden patterns. Even the pyramid's slope angle 51.8 degrees derives from this ratio, creating a shape that channels sunlight with near-perfect symmetry. But the numbers get stranger. Multiply the pyramid's height by 43,200 and you get Earth's polar radius. Its perimeter matches 1/2 minute of latitude at the equator, as if the pyramid was a scale model of the planet itself. Coincidence stacks upon coincidence until it feels intentional. Some researchers argue these connections stem from the royal cubit, the Egyptian standard unit of measurement. At 52.4 centimeters, the cubit wasn't arbitrary. It may have been derived from Earth's circumference divided by 120 million. The real marvel isn't whether the Egyptians knew these constants abstractly, but how they baked them into stone. The king's chamber's dimensions form a perfect 2x1 rectangle, its walls resonating at frequencies that amplify sound. The subterranean chamber sits exactly 60 meters below the apex, aligning with the pyramid's center of gravity. Every measurement feels deliberate, as if the architects were composing a symphony in stone. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the pyramid's missing capstone. If restored, its total height would be 581.3 cubits, a number that mirrors Earth's axial tilt of 23.5 degrees through trigonometric functions. Were the builders encoding celestial knowledge, or were they simply obsessed with harmony? The answer might lie in the pyramid's greatest trick, making the impossible look effortless, turning raw numbers into a monument that still defies explanation. To understand why an entire civilization would dedicate decades of labor to these towering monuments, you have to step into the mind of a pharaoh. Picture Khufu standing on the dunes of Giza, gazing at the empty horizon where his pyramid would one day rise. This wasn't just about building a tomb, it was about reshaping reality itself. In ancient Egyptian belief, the pharaoh wasn't merely a ruler. He was the living incarnation of Horus, the god who bridged heaven and earth. His death wasn't an end, but a transformation, a return to the cosmic order where he joined the sun god Ra on his eternal journey across the sky. The pyramid wasn't just a building, it was a launchpad for divinity. But the vision went deeper than personal glory. These structures were the ultimate political statement, a stone manifesto declaring the pharaoh's absolute authority. Imagine the message sent by a monument visible for miles in every direction, its polished sides gleaming like a second sun, to a society that saw the world as a delicate balance between order and chaos. The pyramid was the ultimate symbol of Maat, the divine harmony the pharaoh was sworn to uphold. Every perfectly aligned block whispered the same truth. This ruler could command the very earth to obey. The religious calculus was equally precise. Pyramid texts, spells, and prayers carved into later pyramids reveal how these structures functioned as machines for resurrection. The ascending corridors mirrored the sun's path. The burial chamber became a crucible for rebirth, and the capstone was thought to channel celestial energy. Even the pyramid's shape held meaning. Some scholars suggest it represented the primordial mound from which creation sprang, while others see it as a frozen ray of sunlight piercing the earth. Yet the most fascinating twist lies in what the pyramids didn't contain. Unlike later tombs packed with treasure, Khufu's sarcophagus was empty when explorers found it. This hints at a startling possibility that the real treasure wasn't gold but the structure itself. The labor, the logistics, the sheer impossibility of it all were the offerings, proof of a kingdom united under its god-king. The pyramid wasn't just a container for a body, it was a battery storing the collective will of a civilization. Perhaps that's why the pyramid building era faded. As pharaohs lost their godlike status over centuries, the monuments shrank until they were mere shadows of Giza's giants. The vision that once moved mountains of stone couldn't survive the slow erosion of faith. But for those few generations when the stars aligned, when absolute belief met absolute power, human hands touched eternity and left behind mountains to prove it. The pyramids stand as distinctly Egyptian achievements, yet their silhouette isn't entirely unique. Half a world away, the stepped ziggurats of Mesopotamia rose centuries earlier, their terraced designs echoing the pyramid's geometry. Could there be a connection? Some historians point to striking parallels. Both structures served as sacred bridges between earth and sky. Both used baked mud bricks in their cores, and both cultures aligned their monuments with celestial events. Even the labor systems show similarities. Mesopotamian records describe rotating work crews paid in grain rations, much like Egypt's pyramid builders. These overlaps have fueled theories of cultural exchange, suggesting ideas might have traveled along ancient trade routes like incense and lapis lazuli. But skeptics counter with equally compelling evidence. While ziggurats were religious temples, pyramids were primarily tombs, their purposes fundamentally different. The construction techniques diverged sharply too. Mesopotamians relied on sun-dried bricks, while Egyptians quarried million-ton limestone blocks. Even the celestial alignments don't quite match. Ziggurats faced the cardinal directions only roughly, whereas the pyramids achieved near-perfect precision. Most tellingly, no definitive artifacts or records prove direct contact between the two civilizations during the pyramid-building era. The debate intensifies when examining workforce origins. A handful of inscriptions mention Asiatics among Egyptian laborers, possibly migrants or prisoners from the Levant. Yet DNA studies of worker skeletons show overwhelmingly local ancestry. Even the famous Giza, a red-haired mummy once cited as proof of foreign workers, turned out to be an ethnic Egyptian with a genetic predisposition for lighter hair. Perhaps the most plausible middle ground lies in shared human ingenuity. Faced with similar challenges, how to build tall, how to honor gods, how to organize masses of workers, both cultures arrived at comparable solutions independently. The pyramid's shape may simply be the most stable way to stack stone at scale, just as the ziggurat steps naturally emerge from brick-laying techniques. What's undeniable is Egypt's signature flair. Unlike ziggurats which faded into ruins, the pyramids endure, their limestone casings once gleaming like mirrors, their chambers engineered to mathematical perfection. Whether inspired by outsiders or born purely of Nile Valley genius, they stand as testaments to what happens when a civilization pours its soul into stone. The echoes of Mesopotamia aren't evidence of copying, but rather reminders that great minds sometimes build alike. Building in the desert wasn't just about moving stone, it was a daily battle against nature's fury. The same sun that baked the limestone blocks into durability also pushed human endurance to its limits. Workers faced temperatures soaring past 40 degrees Celsius, with the desert floor radiating heat like a furnace. But the Egyptians didn't just endure, they engineered solutions. Excavations at the worker villages reveal clever adaptations. Thick mud brick walls providing natural insulation, courtyards positioned to catch Nile breezes, and even traces of woven reed mats that may have served as portable shade. Timing was everything. Construction likely followed a rhythm as precise as the pyramid's geometry. Mornings would begin before dawn, with crews taking advantage of cooler hours to haul stones. By midday, when the sun reached its peak, activity would shift to shaded tasks: precision carving in covered workshops, rope making under awnings, or planning sessions where surveyors checked alignments using the sun's own shadows as guides. The hottest hours might have been reserved for communal meals and rest, with workers retreating to underground chambers where temperatures stayed mercifully stable. Sandstorms posed a different challenge. When the desert winds howled, visibility could drop to zero in minutes. The solution: strategic pauses. Archaeologists have found layers of wind-blown sand between construction phases in some ramps, evidence that work stopped when conditions turned deadly. But even storms were turned to advantage. Workers likely collected the fine, wind-sorted sand that accumulated after storms, using it to polish stones or mix stronger mortar. Hydration was a science unto itself. Unlike modern construction sites with water coolers, the pyramid builders relied on ingenious clay pots called zirs. These porous vessels, filled with Nile water and placed in breezy areas, used evaporation to chill their contents naturally. Recent studies of worker remains show surprisingly healthy teeth for the era, likely thanks to fluoride in their water supply, an accidental benefit from the limestone aquifers feeding their wells. The most surprising discovery: they may have beaten the heat with fashion. Tomb paintings depict laborers wearing linen head wraps soaked in water, an ancient version of evaporative cooling. Some graves contained small amulets of the goddess Taweret, protector of childbirth, but also associated with the Nile's life-giving floods, hinting at prayers for relief from the relentless sun. What emerges isn't a picture of suffering, but of resourcefulness. These builders didn't just withstand the desert, they harnessed its rhythms, turning each challenge into an opportunity for innovation. The pyramids rose not in spite of the harsh climate, but because a civilization learned to listen to its environment and adapt. Hidden in the shadows of the Great Pyramid's grand chambers, far from the eyes of ancient priests and pharaohs, lies something unexpectedly personal: rough scratches in the stone, charcoal smudges, and hastily painted hieroglyphs. These aren't the formal inscriptions of kings, but the living voices of the workers themselves. Take the Kartach of Khufu, not carved in polished granite for eternity, but scrawled in red ochre above a cramped passageway. Nearby, a cheeky graffito reads, "The Drunkards of Menkora," likely the nickname of a crew who prided themselves on their after-work revelry. These marks weren't vandalism. They were signatures of pride, proof that the pyramid wasn't just built by an anonymous mob, but by real people with camaraderie, humor, and a sense of ownership over their Herculean task. The most revealing finds come from hidden corners where workers left their mark between stone courses. In the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, archaeologists found team names like the Green Gang or the Powerful Ones, painted in hieratic script, a cursive form of hieroglyphs used for everyday writing. These weren't just labels, they were badges of honor, suggesting crews competed to lay the most blocks or achieve the straightest lines. Some markings even include dates, like ancient time cards recording a particularly productive week. But the real emotional punch comes from the smaller, quieter messages. A palm print preserved in dried mortar, a sketch of a sleeping dog scratched into a limestone block, a tally counting off days until the next festival. These aren't just artifacts, they're frozen moments of humanity in an otherwise overwhelming project. One poignant example was found near a worker's ramp, a crude drawing of a seated woman with the words "Murat smiles today" beside it, perhaps a laborer's tribute to a loved one back home. The graffiti also shatters myths about how the pyramids were built. Far from the Hollywood image of whipped slaves, These inscriptions reveal structured teams with distinct roles. Quarry crews signed their stones like artists signing canvases. Transport teams left boasts about how far they'd dragged a block. Even the infamous curses, sometimes found near burial shafts, take on new meaning when you realize they were likely workmen's inside jokes. Don't touch this, or Anubis will make you recalculate the angles. Most remarkably, some markings suggest a level of literacy rarely credited to ancient laborers. Not just simple tallies, but playful puns and rhyming couplets. One crew's motto plays on the word for strong and beer, a pun that wouldn't be out of place on a modern construction site. This hints at something revolutionary. Pyramid building may have been an engine of education, where skilled laborers learned to read and write through the very act of recording their work. These inscriptions do more than humanize the builders, they rewrite history. When a worker named Nefertiti left the note, "I helped build this for the glory of my Lord," he wasn't just tagging a wall. He was claiming his place in eternity, proving that the pyramids weren't just monuments to pharaohs, but to the collective spirit of thousands who believed their work mattered. Every smudged fingerprint, every joke in pigment, every team name shouting from the stone is a reminder. Greatness isn't just measured in tons of limestone, but in the human stories etched between the blocks. When the last block was set in place and the final casing stone polished to a mirror shine, the pyramids didn't just become tombs, they became something far greater. They transformed into living legends, their influence rippling outward through time like waves in the Nile. Within centuries of their completion, even the ancient Egyptians forgot exactly how they were built, wrapping them in layers of myth and reverence. Greek historian Herodotus, visiting 2,400 years ago, spun tales of 100,000 slaves toiling under whips, a story that stuck for millennia despite being utterly wrong. The pyramids had already begun their greatest trick, rewriting history to suit the imagination of every generation. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, when Arab scholars like al-Makrizi puzzled over the structures, convinced they held hidden chambers of arcane knowledge. Caliph al-Ma'mun in the 9th century blasted his way into the Great Pyramid, not for treasure, but in search of celestial maps and ancient technologies. He found neither, but his tunnel became the modern tourist entrance, proof that even failed quests leave their mark. The pyramids had become a mirror, reflecting whatever each culture valued most: wisdom, power, or lost golden ages. By Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798, the pyramids were no longer just monuments, they were symbols to claim. The French emperor staged his famous Battle of the Pyramids miles away, knowing their silhouette in dispatches would electrify Europe. His scholars, meanwhile, made the first scientific surveys, uncovering the Rosetta Stone nearby. Suddenly, the pyramids weren't just mysterious relics, they were keys to unlocking an entire civilization's secrets. The 19th century brought treasure hunters like Giovanni Belzoni, who used battering rams to blast through walls, and Richard Vyse, who dynamited his way up shafts in search of hidden chambers. Their destructive methods make modern archaeologists cringe, but their discoveries, like the stress-relieving chambers above the king's chamber, proved the builders' sophistication. The pyramids endured even this assault, their core mysteries intact. Today's technology reveals more than picks and dynamite ever could. Muon scanners peer through stone like X-rays, while LiDAR maps hidden causeways beneath the sand. Yet every answered question births 10 more. Why does the Big Void, discovered in 2017, match the dimensions of the Grand Gallery below it? Are there undiscovered chambers hinted at by thermal anomalies? The pyramids still guard their secrets, challenging each new tool we invent. Beyond archaeology, their influence is everywhere. The Louvre's Glass Pyramid, Las Vegas's Luxor Hotel, Even the dollar bill's unfinished pyramid all nod to their enduring power as symbols. They've starred in films as alien landing pads and in conspiracy theories as repositories of lost Atlantean tech. But perhaps their truest legacy is simpler, proof that humans, given a vision and collective will, can reshape the world. When the last worker downed tools 4,500 years ago, they couldn't have known their creation would outlast languages, empires, even religions. The pyramids were built to make pharaohs immortal, but the real immortality belongs to the nameless thousands whose sweat and genius still take our breath away. The idea that aliens built the pyramids might make for thrilling sci-fi, but the truth is far more fascinating because it's human. Sure, the precision of the Great Pyramid's alignment or the mathematical constants hidden in its dimensions can feel otherworldly, but that doesn't mean we need extraterrestrial explanations. Think about it. If an advanced alien civilization traveled light years to Earth, why would they spend centuries stacking rocks instead of, say, leaving behind a single piece of technology more advanced than copper chisels? The real mystery isn't how aliens could have done it, it's how humans did it with nothing but ingenuity, observation, and sheer determination. Take the so-called impossible precision of the pyramid's construction. Critics love pointing out that the blocks fit together too perfectly for ancient tools, but visit the quarries of Aswan and you'll find unfinished obelisks still attached to bedrock, their surfaces covered in precise chisel marks. These aren't the sloppy scratches of primitive tools, they're the work of master craftsmen who understood stone intimately. Even today, traditional stonemasons in Egypt demonstrate how pounding dolerite hammers against granite can produce surfaces smooth enough to reflect sunlight, no lasers required. Then there's the myth of lost technology, the idea that the Egyptians possessed some advanced knowledge later erased from history. But here's the catch, we've actually found their tools. Wooden mallets, copper chisels, measuring rods, and even the ramps they used still exist in archaeological records. The real secret wasn't futuristic gadgets, it was institutional knowledge passed down through generations. Imagine an unbroken chain of apprentices learning from masters over centuries, each refining techniques slightly. That's not lost technology, it's the cumulative power of human tradition. The Atlantis angle is equally shaky. Plato's story of a sunken civilization was written thousands of years after the pyramids were built, and there's zero evidence connecting the two. Worse yet, the Atlantis myth ignores the very real, very Egyptian context of the pyramids. Their celestial alignments mirror the Nile's flood cycle, their chambers echo Egyptian afterlife beliefs, and their construction methods match other known monuments of the era. To credit Atlantis is to erase the achievements of an entire culture that left detailed records of its own accomplishments. What's most revealing about these fringe theories is what they imply, that ancient people couldn't possibly have achieved such feats on their own. But that says more about us than about them. Maybe we struggle to imagine a world where patience and collective effort could move mountains, where observation of the stars was as precise as any GPS, where a society could align its entire economy around a single sacred goal. The pyramids don't need aliens or Atlantis to be awe-inspiring. They stand as proof that humanity, when united by vision and purpose, can bend the very earth to its will. So the next time someone claims the pyramids are too perfect to be human, remember the workers' graffiti inside hidden chambers, the jokes, the team names, the palm prints in mortar. These aren't the marks of alien visitors, they're the signatures of people just like us who looked at a pile of stone and saw eternity. The same forces that built the pyramids now threaten to undo them. Not sandstorms or earthquakes, but something far more insidious, the breath of modernity. Each year, millions of visitors trek across the Giza plateau, their footsteps compacting the desert floor, their exhales adding moisture that seeps into ancient limestone. Meanwhile, Cairo's expanding skyline pumps pollution into the air, coating the pyramid's remaining casing stones in a corrosive grime. Even the climate itself has turned against these monuments, with rising humidity levels and erratic rainfall destabilizing masonry that survived millennia of dry heat. The irony is crushing. The civilization that mastered eternity now watches its greatest achievements erode within generations. But teams of archaeologists and engineers are fighting back with equal parts innovation and reverence. At the Great Pyramid, delicate laser scans map every crack and fissure, creating digital blueprints that guide restoration. Workers use custom-made hydraulic lime mortar, a modern twist on ancient recipes, to stabilize stones without altering their chemistry. The most groundbreaking tool might be the simplest, shade. Giant tensile fabric canopies now shield sections of the Sphinx from both sun and acid rain, reducing temperature fluctuations that cause microfractures in the stone. Tourism presents a trickier challenge. The pyramids can't be preserved by keeping people away. They're a living cultural touchstone, not a museum diorama. So conservators are rethinking access. Elevated walkways now direct foot traffic away from vulnerable areas, while timed ticketing spreads visitor impact. Some experiments even use augmented reality. At Giza's Step Pyramid, visitors wearing smart glasses see digital reconstructions instead of touching fragile walls, blending education with preservation. The most unexpected threat comes from below. Rising groundwater, fueled by urban runoff and irrigation, is silently attacking the pyramid's foundations. In response, engineers have installed an underground curtain wall around the Giza complex, a deep barrier of impermeable material that deflects moisture. Nearby, solar-powered pumps work around the clock to lower the water table, a modern echo of the ancients' own hydrological genius. Perhaps the boldest preservation effort is happening far from Egypt. Laboratories worldwide are creating digital twins of the pyramid's hyper-accurate 3D models updated in real time by drones and sensors. If disaster strikes, these virtual backups could guide reconstruction down to the millimeter. Meanwhile, seed banks preserve strains of Nile barley and Emma wheat, ensuring future restorers can replicate original mortars. The fight isn't just technical, it's philosophical. How much restoration is too much? When does preservation become reinvention? Some argue for leaving every scar as historical record, while others advocate discrete reinforcements to prevent collapse. The debate crystallized when laser scans revealed hidden cracks in the bent pyramid's core, visible only through technology, but potentially catastrophic if ignored. The compromise: internal carbon fiber rods, invisible to visitors but strong enough to buy centuries. What's truly inspiring is how these efforts mirror the pyramid builders' own ethos. Just as they planned for eternity, today's conservators think in timelines that dwarf human lifespans. A repaired stone isn't meant to last decades, but millennia. The tools have changed: drones instead of plumb lines, polymers instead of plaster, but the vision remains the same: to outwit time itself. Every patch of cleaned stone, every stabilized corridor, whispers the same promise the original builders made: we will not let the desert reclaim what humanity built to touch the sky. The pyramids don't just belong to the past, they speak directly to who we are today. At their core, these ancient wonders are masterclasses in what humanity can achieve when we channel collective effort toward a singular vision. Think about the problem solving on display: no cranes, no computers, just raw ingenuity. When the Egyptians needed to move 60-ton granite beams, they didn't wait for technology to catch up. They turned the Nile into a highway and wet sand into a lubricant. That spirit, adapting what's at hand to conquer the impossible, is as vital now as it was 4,500 years ago. Modern engineers tackling climate change or space exploration face the same fundamental challenge: limited resources, unlimited ambition. The pyramids remind us that constraints aren't roadblocks, they're invitations to innovate. Collaboration leaps from every stone. The pyramid builders weren't solitary geniuses. They were thousands of farmers, craftsmen, and surveyors working in orchestrated harmony. Recent discoveries reveal how they organized into teams with specialized roles: quarry crews, transport experts, precision carvers, each contributing a piece of the puzzle. Sound familiar? It's the same principle behind today's skyscrapers or vaccine development. Diverse skills united by shared purpose. The difference: the Egyptians sustained this collaboration for decades without digital spreadsheets or video calls. Their secret: a culture that valued every contributor, from the architect drawing celestial alignments to the laborer baking bread for the crews. In an age where workplace disconnection is rampant, the pyramids stand as monuments to what happens when people feel their work matters. Ambition radiates from the desert floor to the pyramid's apex. Khufu didn't set out to build a tomb. He aimed to create a machine for immortality, a structure so perfect it would defy time itself. That audacity, to reach beyond what seems practical, is what propels humanity forward. Consider how SpaceX's Mars ambitions or the Large Hadron Collider's cosmic questions echo the same boundless curiosity. The pyramids challenge us to ask, what's our equivalent of stacking 2 million blocks? What legacy are we building that will whisper to future civilizations? But perhaps the most humbling lesson is patience. The pyramids weren't rushed, they were grown layer by layer, year by year. In an era obsessed with quarterly profits and viral moments, their slow, deliberate progress feels revolutionary. They teach us that some achievements can't be hurried, that true mastery requires respecting the rhythm of stone, the flow of seasons, the arc of generations. As climate crises and infrastructure gaps loom, their example urges us to think in lifetimes, not election cycles. The pyramids were never just about death, they were about legacy. Every chisel mark, every aligned corridor shouts that ordinary people fed on bread and beer, working with copper and rope, can bend the universe to their will. That's their gift to us, not alien mysteries or buried treasure, but the blazing certainty that human hands, when united by vision, can reshape the world. The question isn't what the pyramids meant then, it's what we dare to build with their lessons now. For all we've uncovered about the pyramids, their silent stones still guard secrets that defy even modern science. Take the missing capstones, the pyramidions that once crowned these monuments like golden spikes reaching for the sun. Not a single original capstone survives intact from the Giza pyramids, leaving us to wonder, how did workers maneuver these polished, often metal-clad blocks to dizzying heights without scaffolding or cranes? Some theories suggest internal ramps or lever systems, but the truth is, we've never found physical evidence of the final ascent. The capstone's placement remains the pyramid's last literal puzzle piece, a feat so precise, it's as if the builders erased their own methods to deepen the mystery. Then there are the whispers of hidden chambers. Ground-penetrating radar and muon tomography have revealed tantalizing voids like the Big Void above the Grand Gallery, a space 30 meters long with no known entrance. Is it a structural quirk, a collapsed chamber, or something more deliberate? The scans can't tell us. Even the so-called air shafts in the King's Chamber, long thought to be symbolic passages, mystify researchers. Robotic explorers found miniature copper handles and tiny doors within them, hinting at functions beyond ventilation. Were they part of a celestial alignment system, or did they serve some ritual purpose we've yet to decipher? The construction techniques themselves still spark debate. How did workers achieve such flawless leveling across 13 acres of bedrock? Lasers have confirmed the pyramid's base is flat to within 2 centimeters, an error margin that would challenge modern contractors with steel tools. Some speculate they used water-filled trenches as natural levels, but no surviving diagrams or tools explain the method. Even the ramp systems remain theoretical. While the Hatnub Quarries spiral ramp offers clues, we've found nothing comparable at Giza. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't how, but why certain features exist. The subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid, rough-hewn and seemingly abandoned, defies explanation. Why dig 30 meters into solid rock only to leave the space unfinished? Was it a symbolic underworld, a scrapped plan, or something else entirely? Meanwhile, the pyramid's mathematical quirks like its pi and golden ratio correlations continue to fuel speculation. Were these intentional design choices happy coincidences or evidence of a deeper, lost knowledge? Even the workforce holds unanswered questions. Graffiti reveals team names and boasts, but we've found no personal records detailing daily life. How did crews communicate across language barriers? What songs or chants kept rhythm during backbreaking hauls? The pyramid's human soundtrack is lost to time. These gaps in understanding aren't failures of research, they're invitations. Every unanswered question keeps the pyramids alive, not as static relics, but as dynamic puzzles still unfolding. Modern technologies like quantum imaging and AI-assisted archaeology promise new revelations, but the stones may yet keep their deepest secrets. After all, the builders didn't just construct a tomb, they crafted an eternal enigma, ensuring their work would never cease to captivate. In that, they succeeded beyond imagining. The pyramids stand not just as relics of a vanished civilization, but as living proof of what happens when human ambition refuses to accept limits. What makes them truly remarkable isn't their size or age, it's the undeniable message carved into every limestone block. Ordinary people, working together, can accomplish the unimaginable. Consider the precision of those star-aligned corridors, cut with nothing but copper tools and celestial observations, or the thousands of workers who transformed a pharaoh's vision into geometry so perfect, modern lasers still marvel at its accuracy. These weren't gods or aliens, they were farmers, stonemasons, and bakers who believed in something bigger than themselves. There's a profound lesson in how the pyramids blur the line between myth and mortar. For centuries, their construction was shrouded in tales of supernatural forces until archaeology revealed the truth. The real magic wasn't in divine intervention, but in the quiet brilliance of problem solving. Wet sand reducing friction, ramps designed like spiral staircases, medical care that kept workers healthy under crushing loads. These weren't shortcuts, they were triumphs of collective intelligence, proving that innovation thrives when communities unite behind a shared purpose. Yet the pyramid's greatest legacy might be how they redefine what's possible across time. When Khufu ordered construction to begin, he wasn't just planning a tomb, he was launching a project that would outlive languages, empires, even the stars it was aligned with. That long-term thinking feels almost radical today, in a world obsessed with quarterly results and viral moments. The builders didn't rush, they layered stone upon stone, year after year, trusting that their work would echo through millennia. And echo it has not just as a tourist attraction, but as a challenge to every generation that follows. What will we build that lasts? As new technologies peel back the pyramid's secrets, muon scanners revealing hidden chambers, AI reconstructing lost ramp systems, we're reminded that their story isn't finished. Every discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, another name to the list of contributors. The graffiti left by the drunkards of Menkora crew, the healed fractures in a laborer's bones. The bakeries that fueled this epic project. These details transform the pyramids from cold stone into a chorus of human voices, whispering across 45 centuries. So the next time you see that iconic silhouette against the desert sky, remember, it's not just a monument to the dead. It's a celebration of the living, of what happens when vision meets perseverance, when a society decides to reach for the stars and drags them down to earth. The real treasure wasn't in Khufu's burial chamber. It was in the collective effort that raised those stones, and that's a secret worth unearthing again and again. Now we'd love to hear from you which pyramid mystery keeps you up at night. The hidden chambers, the celestial math, or the untold stories of the workers themselves. Drop your thoughts below and let's keep the conversation going. After all, the pyramids were built to spark wonder, and they're still doing their job perfectly.